Welcome to Legendary Exits, conversations with purpose-driven entrepreneurs. In this series, we sit down with the leaders and legends who turned their exits into opportunities for impact. We explore living lives of significance, leveraging exits to fund personal and financial goals, and building a best-in-class business along the way. You ready? Let's dive in.
Hey, welcome to this episode of Legendary Exits. I'm your host, Micah Brandenburg. I'm delighted to be here today in conversation with Dean Harrington. Dean, thanks for taking the time to have this conversation.
It's a blessing to be with you. I always like our conversations, and that we can memorialize one it's even better.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, hey, I have two items of note. My first contact with you was 15 years ago. I want to talk about that in a little bit in the episode. We're both native Rhode Islanders from the smallest but greatest state in the union. But as we kick things off, you're obviously an exited entrepreneur. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to talk about your life, the building of the company, the exit, the preparations you did, what life is like after the exit. But before we go there, I'm curious, walk us through who you are and share with us anything you would want for the audience to get to know you.
First and foremost, I'm a brother in Christ, and that's an important thing to me. It's not a light distinction. It's how I ran my business. It's how I run my life. And who I am, 35 years, I was the CEO, founder of Shamrock Home Loans, Providence, Rhode Island. When I sold the company, we were a little more than 100 employees, 23 states, which meant 23 locations. At our peak, we were probably close to 200 employees.
Okay.
Started with a partner, bought that partner out 7 years later. Hired a guy that became the de facto operations guru, who I elevated to president in around 2002, 2003, when I became the CEO, and had a great run until November of 23, when it was time to move on.
Great. So November 23 was when you transitioned the business. You sold it. And take us back to the beginning. When did you start the business? Was that 89? Was that
89,
correct?
yeah. Good math.
Yeah. 89. So 11. So 34 years you ran this company. That's really fantastic.
Yep.
How did you get into this? It sounds like you founded the company. How did you get into being an entrepreneur? What were you doing before this? Was this what you envisioned doing out of college, or, what did that look like?
To me, only God. It's the most bizarre thing. So I always was an entrepreneurial kid, and when I define entrepreneur, gets thrown around a lot, and we assume that everybody has the same definition, and they don't. And so to me, it was, I want to make my own money.
Got it. Okay.
I don't want to be slave to somebody else's decision to give me a pay raise.
Yes.
Or to pay me more money, or to give me the runway that I wanted to do things. So for me, entrepreneurship was controlling my career. So I did that as a young kid in any number of ways, all of them, the typical cliches, paper boy, most principally, selling Cutco knives.
I love it.
Getting licensed as a Series 7 guy for a very weakly founded adventure, getting insurance salesman license, anything that could control my own destiny in terms of income. But what really changed it is, next door to me was a guy that had a home he had a mortgage company that then became a bank.
Okay.
He ended up moving when I was about 15 or 16, because I didn't live in a neighborhood, Micah, where bank owners lived.
Yeah, neither did I growing up. I think that's a story for many of us.
Be clear about that. And in fact, I didn't live in a neighborhood where former or future bank owners would even live. I don't know what he was doing there, but he sold to his vice president.
Okay.
Who even shouldn't have been there. So it was kind of odd. And by the time I had gotten done with, I did a little bit of college, but I was not really an academic kid. I was a self-learner, and had gone through some struggles. My mom died a couple weeks after I graduated high school. Had a funeral. Ended up having a funeral the day I started college, and then my father got sick and never went back to work. And I was the oldest 5 kids in 4 years, so I could hide the fact that I wasn't attending class. That's the moral of the story. The moral of the story isn't that I persevered. I actually did the opposite. I didn't persevere. I said, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
And I was working for a supermarket chain. About a year later, I get a call from the vice president next door who had opened his own company
Okay.
and said, hey, you're fit for this, but you need to get some experience. You should go work for a finance company. So I looked for a finance company job in 1983 when unemployment was 15% with no college degree.
Okay.
Took me a year, maybe a little less. Ended up getting a finance company job, spent 2 years in that, and I got the call from the mortgage owner next door that, hey, it's your time to come to work in the mortgage company.
I love it. I love it.
That's what I did.
So basically, finished high school, did a lot of different things, and then ultimately, through God's providence and various opportunities, got into this industry of finance and mortgage banking. I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, walk us through one specific detail that we didn't talk about as you talked about the transition of November 2023. How did you transition? Who did you sell the company to? How did that happen? Was it an internal sale to team members? Was it externally to another company? Just super high level.
Yeah, good question. I sold in the industry to one of the top 10 mortgage banking companies in the country, CMG Financial.
Wonderful.
Tremendous company.
Yep.
I ended up going in front of 11 companies during the process.
Oh, wow.
Which was partly done on my own and partly done with an M&A firm.
Wonderful.
And probably done with my accounting firm, which was a major player in our industry, in our space. And ultimately sold to CMG.
Wonderful. So a 34-year ride in the world of M&A. We'd call it a sale to a third party, maybe a strategic acquirer. Might have been a financial transaction, but a strategic acquirer, somebody in your own industry, just to place that for the folks who are listening. I love all this. I want to talk about the deal in a minute, but I want to go back to the very first time that I actually heard of you and reached out to you and had a brief conversation with you, which was in 2010. It was 15 years ago. And in this podcast, we interview purpose-driven entrepreneurs, and it was very clear to me from the first time I met you that was something that was true of you, because the impetus for me reaching out to you was I heard you give a talk about changing the business model of your company, of Shamrock. Mm-hmm. I want to say it was come about through the credit crisis, and you just had a different vision. And I'm curious, anything there to tell us? How did that play into the story of growth and this exit with that pivot that you made in the business back in that season?
Every way and no way and every way.
Okay, tell us about that.
The first 17 years of Shamrock, we were a direct-to-consumer company.
Okay.
With about $1 million a year in direct mail, which can sound like a lot, but it's not.
You spent $1 million a year on direct mail, or you did business? You spent $1 million a year in advertising. Okay, yeah, keep that.
Direct mail. We did that from basically 89 to the summer of 2007. So our product was almost principally refinances. So we were not alive and well in the purchase space.
Got it.
And we were fine with that. We had great years of profit. We built a lot of people in the mortgage industry because we brought people in that weren't in the industry and taught them how to work in the industry. I was able to find like-minded entrepreneurs, and we had a great run. But unfortunately, when the financial crisis hit, right, refinances really essentially went away. Just to make it simple for the discussion here today. And so we're sitting there with no product. I use the analogy, Micah, that it's kind of like if you went into Home Depot, and they said, "Hey, we don't sell wood anymore. Well, we sell all the products you can use to bang nails into wood, put wood in a house, and construct around wood, but we don't sell wood." That's where we were. So we put a panel together of smart people and began to, inside the company and outside the company, and had an executive group. What are we going to do?
Okay.
And was also kind of praying through it. They said, well, you were a mortgage lender as a direct-to-consumer. That's a little unusual. Most direct-to-consumers are mortgage brokers, smaller entities, smaller platforms, different platform.
Sure.
they're not going to get through this. They're not capitalized like you are. Why don't you go acquire them if they have a purchase business?
Okay.
So we essentially went out and bought 2 companies. And we really bought one, but it really was 3 because we bought 2 other people that were done, but had the relationships with realtors that we didn't have.
Okay.
And so we spent a year, basically 2008, acquiring small mortgage brokers that were not going to get through the crisis because they weren't capitalized and we were.
But they had the customer acquisition channels to get that purchase business, and that was the reason that you wanted to acquire them. Is that correct?
They had the channel we didn't have.
Got it. Got it. Keep going.
And so I'd go to events when we made the breakout to be a direct to consumer, go from direct to consumer to referral partner business with realtors. And they would say, in Rhode Island, now you know how small that is.
Yes.
Never heard of you. I'm like, we're the number 1 lender in Rhode Island. We do more business than anybody. And it's pretty much close to true.
Yeah.
It was true enough to say it at the time. Well, I've never heard of you. And that really bothered me as a businessman. And so I said, we're going to fix that because ultimately every businessman, every salesperson has the same job: eliminate obscurity for what they do. That's what their job is. Their job every day when they get up in the morning is to eliminate some part of obscurity for what they do. And after 17 years, I had learned that I had done a lousy job at that. And it's not because I didn't know that that was the job. I exactly knew that was their job. I used to teach that. So we made the complete conversion. You talk about Cortez and the boats. We didn't just burn the boats. I mean, we went to the other side. We burned the boats. We built the submarine.
Okay.
We went underwater with the submarine. We came out and it flew into the air.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
We made.
What was that a good move, a bad move? Well, I mean, relative, just thinking about it in terms of business outcomes, in terms of the impact you're able to have.
It was unbelievable outcome. One of the prize jewels of our career, really, that we were able to pull that off because most companies that were saddled with just a direct-to-consumer model were not able to get through. They didn't survive.
Cool.
And we didn't only survive. By 2011, we were the number 1 purchase lender in the state.
Wonderful. I love it. I love it. We've talked a little bit about obviously how you started this business, just a high level of this big sort of transition point of going from refinance to purchase business, and obviously the exit. I want to sort of pivot the conversation for a quick moment and just I want to talk about the personal side of this. I want to talk about your own personal values and how those were lived out in the business. I mean, is that something that is in the tip of your tongue for you? What does it mean to live a life of significance? And was that something that changed for you throughout your business career about what it meant to live a good life?
Well, it's funny. I don't think it changed throughout my life, but the definition and the question changed. I wrestled with what my purpose in life was, with what your mission statement is, and I got those kind of messed up because I would look at mission statement. I think you and I have talked about this a little bit. Okay. Mission statement needs a location. It means what mission, where are we going? And so for me, that was an answer to what and how we're doing things.
Okay.
And mission is never passionate about what and how. It's passionate about who and why. And so I began to talk about core purpose rather than mission statement. What is our core purpose?
Yep.
And then I kind of bifurcated, and I began to learn in 16 and 17 that our mission for our clients was we came to work every day because people deserve to live in a home they love, and they don't know how to make that dream a reality. So we would tell our employees, why are we here? We're here because people deserve to live in a home they love. Now, they don't deserve to live in a home. We tried that, 40506, and we turned a bunch of good renters into terrible homeowners. Yeah. But when they come to love a home and they come in with the kids and they sit down and they say, we found this home, we love this home, we really want to own it, and they can't qualify, it breaks my heart. Yeah. And when it broke my heart, I knew that was my purpose from a business standpoint. But my purpose on the other side of it, because there were kind of two, my vision of the future, if you will, was about my staff.
Okay.
And it's still when I left, the hardest part I left was not the clients. The hardest part was leaving the staff. My purpose in the latter part of my career was not nearly about because people deserve to live in a home they love. It was all about building the next generation of leaders.
I love it.
It broke my heart if somebody came to work and wasn't enthusiastic about it. I worked with a company yesterday on the annual planning,
Okay.
and they have 18 employees. Every single one of them is so fired up to come to work each day. And they're a 25-year-long company, very successful, very profitable.
Yes. Yeah. You talked about in your history 100 folks that when you transitioned, and as many as 200 at previous moments.
Yeah.
And you've talked about this passion in a certain chapter of your life to really impact employees, which I believe in as well. I think the only reason to be in business is to impact lives, and employees is the first audience. Walk us through that. There's probably folks listening to this saying, hey, this sounds like a really common theme, but how did that play out for Dean? What did that mean for you? What were you trying to accomplish in the lives of these employees? And then tactically, how did you do it?
Good question. So first, it's alignment of values.
Okay.
And values, and I'll steal it right down to EOS for those EOS fans out there. It's your values are what you expect of one another. They're not aspirational, not what you wish they are. It's what you expect of one another. So one of our values at Shamrock was consistent daily demeanor. We expected people to be reasonably the same person every day. Another value was resourcefulness, and we define that as being able to defend the work you've done before involving somebody else's time, effort, and energy. So we had these core values, and they were based on people that we admired that had been successful in our company, and that had to also reflect me as the owner.
Yeah.
And so the first thing we did was got really rigorous on hiring with that, and probably more rigorous on terminating on that. There are way too many companies, and I work with a lot of companies now in my current career of working with them on alignment, execution, values, and culture.
Yeah.
That hang on to a very skillful employee who does not fit the values. And the impact of releasing somebody from your company that's skillful, that doesn't have values, is the single biggest force multiplier a business owner can ever do. It's easy to release a guy that doesn't fit the values because they don't have the skills.
Yes. But when they have the skills, or they're a top producing sales originator, but they don't have the values, that's going to be a more difficult decision to make.
It is when you aren't serious about your vision.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to build the next generation of leaders, I can't have people like that in the company. And how serious am I about it? And every time we terminated somebody like that, everybody sat up straight and the company got better.
Yeah.
And we did it a lot of times. We probably, at one time or another, terminated the top person in a department 10 times.
Because they weren't living out those values consistently.
3 times they were the number one salesperson.
Wow.
Which in my industry, you don't do that because they're getting recruited every day and signing bonuses. And all of a sudden I'm telling them, yeah, you don't have a job here tomorrow.
Interesting.
Because what we expect of one another, you don't live up to.
So clearly there's a pragmatic impact when you let folks go, right? Both for them and for the company. So how would you walk, somebody who's listening to this through that, who's wrestling with the fact that they don't have, they're wrestling with the fact that they have an employee that they feel is not a fit for the company. Again, not because of skills, but core values.
Yeah. Well, first you better have your core values. You better have them not loosely. You better have examples of who and what they look like. EOS likes to treat. Yeah.
I'm going to riff on that. Not just listing a value, which is a belief, but literally teasing that out into the behaviors of how we would observe that. Is that what you're encouraging us to do?
Yeah. You should have a history of it. You should have an example. You should have of the value itself, an anti-value, and an analogy for every single value. And who's that on? That's on the chief repeating officer, the CRO. And that is, I love Seth Godin's line. If you have to ask if you ask me who to hire as the chief repeating officer, I'm going to tell you, you should go to the pet store and get yourself a little puppy and train it to bite you in the ass every time you answer that question and you're not the answer.
Yeah.
It's you. So I had an analogy, anti-value, history, example for each of the 5 core values. And I would deliver those. I
love the anti-value, by the way. Keep going.
Yeah, it's a great way to teach, is to show this is the opposite of consistent daily demeanor. It's a person that when they have a fight at home, you know about it by 9:05. It wears with them the same day. If tomorrow there is no fight, you get a different person showing up.
Yes.
Now that may or may not be the one I would use. I actually used the Patriots a lot because for a long time they were a really well-run organization.
Yeah.
So that's the first part of it, is being able to identify that this person doesn't fit. And then you want to give them a corrective plan. You want to give them a PIP. They will usually fail that.
Yes.
Almost always, but you should do it because it makes determination a lot easier. And so the PIP, you fail this core value of resourcefulness. Every time you are taught something, you go to 5 other people to confirm it. You go into the president's office to make sure he agrees with it.
Yeah.
You're dragging down everybody. You lack confidence to go forward when you're green lighted. Why is that? How can we work on it?
Yeah. I love your focus on clarity, because I get asked all the time in the work that we do, consulting with owners and leadership teams, specifically owners and CEOs, hey, I'm not really sure if this person is the right fit. And I say, well, really, you get 2 choices. It doesn't matter if it's a core values issue or a skills issue, right? You get 2 choices. You can either fire them willy-nilly, which I'm not a fan of because dealing with people's lives, or you can create radical clarity. And you can communicate that radical clarity and let that person see if they're willing and able to opt into it, right? And it becomes very clear over time whether people are willing and able to opt into something, but only if you have radical clarity about what the expectations are.
And that's what's absent.
Yes.
It's absent everywhere.
Yes.
It's so absent that it gives me actually a little career. Well, so help fix this. You just toggle my mind on something else. One of the things I would ask, we didn't ask it inside because we knew the answer, are they an A player? And the A player is easily defined outside the core values by, would you hire them again?
Yeah.
And if they were available talent on the street, are they top 10% of the talent that you could hire?
Yeah.
Maybe top 20% of the most. So if they're not, and the answer is almost always no, they shouldn't be here. You should not accept less than that. And there are exceptions. They just got here. We can train them. It's a small mistake.
Yes.
But they look at me and say, no, I'd never hire that person again. Then why are we having this discussion about whether they should be here?
Yeah, exactly. I think at the end of the day, to lean into this, I think employees want 3 things. And I think there's so many different leadership books and management books out there that it's confusing to owners and CEOs. And so I say, your employees really want 3 things. They want to be valued, they want to be empowered, and they want to be developed.
Yeah.
They want to be valued as a human being, not just for the role. They want to be empowered, but the basis of empowerment is clarity. I can't empower you to do something unless we're in agreement about what you're here to do.
Yep.
And I think for great players, they want to be developed to excel now and for the next role. And
that's good.
Personal thesis there. Hey, I want to talk a little bit about, I want to pivot, and I want to just share with you a quick stat that we often see, and I want to see what your experience was because you're 18 months out now from your extra transition. So first off, out of the gate, you might be familiar with some of these stats, but 70% of companies that go to market fail to sell. Really sobering fact. So the very minority of companies that go to market actually transact. But of those owners that transact, the stat that I wanted to share with you is that the vast majority, over 70%, have deep regret within a year that they have sold their company. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but I'm curious, what was your experience now that you're 18 months out and you've gone through this? What was your experience after selling with satisfaction or with regret in moving on from your company?
Interesting. I don't fit into that bell curve of actually not a bell curve at 70%, but I don't fall into that.
Why do you think that is?
I vetted it with God. It was God's decision. It was never my decision. And that may sound wonky or a little crazy to some of your listeners that don't have the faith walk that I have, but I walked this out with God for 2 years. And there were two things abundantly clear. That, the company has to get bigger to survive, and you can't get it there yourself. You have access to market issues that have to be fixed, and I'm going to match you with the partner that will retain the most of your employees.
Okay.
And you won't be part of that. And the reason you won't be part of that is because I have other things for you to work on. And I was abundantly clear of that. I can also say in the background, I was a partnership for 2 years for us a corporation. So it's 35 plus years of me doing this. And I loved the model that we switched to that was referral based.
Yeah.
I think it is the right model.
Okay.
I wish it were consumer based, kind of. I wish we got to the consumer before the realtor did.
Yeah, because you, as a company, you would be in control of your market acquisition channels and your customer acquisition costs and all that, rather than having a partnership-based motion.
So what ended up happening is I became subservient to whoever owns that realtor relationship, and that would be loan officers. And so that game, especially with relative to high signing bonuses and retention, was countercultural. In 2023, we were named the number one company in our industry, 871 companies for culture. We were number 2 the year before. We were number 5 the year before. And it's a real poll, and it's a real data. It's National Mortgage News, and it's serious.
Yes.
And I was pretty sure in 24, 25, 26, we couldn't have hung on to that spot. And it broke my heart because the industry had changed to such suppression of market returns, capital markets, everything had gone so sideways from an ownership standpoint. You are now literally making 70 cents on the dollar, and there were 40% less dollars being produced. So it was crazy.
And I got to imagine your margins are getting eroded because these loan officers are very competitive, moving around to companies, and they're going to places where they're getting a larger.
Even if they didn't move, I'll use simple numbers just to make it easy. So if you were doing 100 loans a month, you were doing now 40.
Okay.
If you were making 13,000 a loan, you were now making 9,000 a loan.
Yeah.
On those 40 loans. But your loan officer's sitting there saying, they'll pay me more because I'm only doing 40 loans now too.
Yes.
So I need more money per loan.
Yeah.
And so it got real tough. I turned 62 at that point, had done very well in my career, had lost money for a good year and a half, and was willing to lose money to maintain the culture and get through this. But it was clear I wasn't going to get through it. And God said, it's time to step aside. So I didn't have the regret. What I did when I stepped aside is, and regret's probably the wrong word, the culture changes when the culture advocate is out of the building.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute, because I had this. You've talked about a faith orientation. I come from a Christian worldview as well. I was at the C12 Business Forums conference last week that I know you typically are at as well. I had a conversation there we're part of the 310 coalition that serves C12 companies.
Great.
I had a conversation with Martin Myers, and he was just sharing with me that so many of the companies in C12 that operate on this business as a ministry model, for those who are not familiar with C12, sort of the idea that this business is owned by God because the owner has come from a Christian worldview, and they're seeking to steward that and to do good in the world and in the marketplace. And yeah, one of the things Martin shared with me, who runs that 310 coalition, was that so many C12 companies were selling to private equity, and private equity is telling them, hey, we'll keep the business as a ministry focus, but then really it went away after the fact. I think you're thinking about something very similar with this cultural piece. I want to ask a couple of questions. One, when you were doing your roadshow and you were talking to these 10 or 11 different acquirers as you talked about it, was the concept of preservation of culture something that you interviewed or talked with these 10 different potential acquirers.
Yeah, at length. And they were going to let us maintain ourselves as a division within their company, even retaining our name. One wasn't, so that was going to be out. So we were allowed to retain the Shamrock name,
Okay.
keep our office and keep our separate identity under the corporate umbrella. And my company was really run at the executive leadership level by 8 leaders, but 3 primary ones, me as the CEO, then a COO, which was effectively a growth officer with way more experience in the industry than I had, and then the president of the company.
Yeah.
So I had 2 dynamo guys at the top.
Wonderful.
So when we sold, 2 of the 3 were going to be part of it. I wasn't going to be part of it, which I was fine with. And I thought for sure, having worked with those gentlemen for so long, that there would be a retention of the things that I did to ensure culture. And I was clear about it. I was not unclear about it. I was not contractual about it, which I could not have been.
Sure.
It would have thrown a monkey wrench would have probably had the parent company saying, no, we don't agree to subordinate culture contracts at the our branch level. We won't oppose you instilling these, provided they're modest and sensible, which of course they were. But that went away, and it went away immediately, and it never came back. And it's a year and a half now. And
this isn't because the acquirer CMG forced this on you. The point you're bringing out is when you were president of the company, you were the driving force of tilling that culture.
Yeah, I would say CMG, I think, would allow it. I think the 2 guys that I left in hand would promote it. But what I've learned is that when you're a founder, CEO, C12 member, it's hard to replicate you. And I hate saying that because it sounds really like humility. But I've heard that from my employees. So when I left, my employees did not think they would miss me. This was a big thing. I wasn't in their file. I wasn't in their file anymore. I didn't fix their loans for them. I had for a long time. That was other people did it better than I did. So what they got frustrated. Well, I'm glad you're leaving the other 2 guys because I need those 2 guys. I'll miss you because you're a super nice guy.
Yeah.
What I heard when I left is, oh, no. I miss you way more than I thought I did. Anybody can fix my loans. Not really, but they can fix my loans. But where's the guy that kept the culture?
Yes. I think you're hitting on the fact that, the cultural piece, which sounds so very ethereal, oftentimes brings a massive force multiplier to the satisfaction of employees. I do want to riff for a moment, though, on this idea of how we could potentially preserve culture, because I think there are folks listening to this podcast that there might be family generational businesses where they're going to pass it down to children from one child to the next generation. That might be, privately held owner who's going to transition the baton to a private equity firm, but some of the management team is going to stay on, or it might be an internal transition like an ESOP. In your mind, now having gone through this, now having seen some of the flaws, if I can put it that way, of preserving the culture, what would you do differently if you were now stepping back and creating that strategy and that plan to preserve this culture for the benefit of your employees and team and customers? How would you do it?
I'm going to answer that in the rearview mirror, obviously.
Yep.
And quickly admit that everything I tell you, I would not have been able to do.
Okay.
In all likelihood. So I had these 2 superstar guys. The 3rd superstar I had was my daughter. And she has the culture side and the skill side. And if I could have gone back, instead of both of those guys being left in charge, I would have negotiated where she would have been one of the ones left in charge.
Okay.
Now, I just said why that can't be done. The biggest reason those 2 guys were retained is they ran the sales staff. And retaining the sales staff is where the value prop is in the sale.
Yes.
So my 40 plus salespeople had to stay to retain market share.
Yep.
My daughter was the head of ops. They all loved her, and she was also a salesperson. She didn't operate as one. She was licensed and had the passion for it. So in a perfect world, I would have come to them and said, look, you only got, so half of you guys love this one sales leader, this other half love this other sales leader. I'm putting two of the guys together. They'll stay, I'll leave, and you'll all stay, which is what happened.
Yeah.
In the other way, I would have extracted one of them, put my daughter in place, and said she's going to be responsible for keeping
Yes.
that group. And they would have blossomed under that.
What I'm hearing from you is this, you tell me if I've got it right. So frequently when we're looking at organizational charts and we're thinking about a succession or a transition plan, we're thinking about roles and competencies. Hey, who's going to lead marketing? Who's going to lead sales? Who's going to lead secondary market or operations, right? But equally as important is who's going to continue to lead until the culture.
More important in a succession.
Yeah.
More important.
And
talk about
that's
succession.
the piece that potentially was missing over the last 18 months, in your opinion.
I'm shocked because both of those gentlemen are guys I love and I care about, and they care about people.
Yes.
But they don't do a morning huddle like I did. They don't bring the faith narrative side of it, which even the non-faith people came to like.
Yeah.
Because that's the way God's built our heart.
Well, let's go there for a quick minute. I told you at the C12 conference 2 years ago, you were in a workout, a workshop, a breakout, and you said something that's deeply impacted me, and I've thought about it, and I've shared it with many folks ever since then. Because you talked about the fact that you're a Christian CEO, many people at the company that are not necessarily followers in that same way, but you had a way of sharing that with folks when they came on board that was in their best interest. I'm curious if you might share that with us now.
Yeah, I would say, let me give you the quick talk by coming to Shamrock. When you come to Shamrock, you have to know this. Don't take the job. Let's start it that way. I am the Jesus freak in the corner office. And I'd see the hell because I'm in New England, and that's a dark place in a lot of ways, faith-wise. It's just, as you know, it's least biblical, least churched, other than probably Washington State. So it was an odd look. I had one guy say to me once, "Is that legal?" There's actually the Constitution to protect me to be able to be Christian in my workplace. What's not legal is the government coming in and stopping me from being a Christian in the workplace. You have it backwards. So I would do a quick thing, and I said, so I'm gonna tell you that no matter what your faith walk is, that's really good for you. That I identify as a follower of Jesus Christ. It's the best news you could have gotten. And if you were on the borderline about this job, you should take it. Because first and foremost, it means that I only have one God. I don't have other gods. And you'd say, well, what do you mean other gods? Well, you've worked for people like this. You've worked for people that had the God of money, the God of being right, the God of ego, the God of getting all the credit. And they'd start nodding. I said, I'm a sinful man. I have an ego like everybody else, but with my walk, I don't have those gods. They've been displaced. I don't have them. The second thing, and it spins into the third thing, is that we have to live under two commands as a person of Christ. We have to love God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and we have to love our neighbor. So let me tell you why that's really good for you. First of all, I've looked in the Bible. I try to find a qualifier for that neighbor one.
Yeah.
Like the neighbor that looks like me, the neighbor that thinks like me, the neighbor that votes like me, the neighbor that has the same sexual orientation I have. It's not there. I got to love all of them. So no matter who you are, I'm called to love you. And the third one is, I started with the second one. I'm out of practice with this. That I have to live by what God wants me to live by, and that includes not being right, not getting all the credit, and that's going to advantage you a great deal working here because you've worked at places where the CEO was his own God, and he had no belief that he had to love his employees.
I love it. So you're really just highlighting for people the benefit of, they don't have to share that same common faith with you, but the benefit of what that faith that you have, how it impacts them, and how it's going to create an amazing workplace in a place where you care for them deeply, as much about them as you do for yourself in the second great command. So
Absolutely.
I love it.
And the non-believers got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't seen a guy like you. I don't believe you guys really exist. I think you're all hypocrites. I'll try you on.
Yeah.
And they would really say that to me. And I'd say, well, I welcome that challenge. I should be tried on.
Yeah. Wonderful. I love it. Thank you for sharing that with us. Hey, few minutes we've got left. I just want to talk a little bit about, preparing for the transition and the exit itself. So November, I believe you said November 23. When did you start thinking about all of this in terms of the transition and selling to a third party to be able to be bigger, to survive?
End of Q1.
And get there.
End of Q1. Q1 was really bad.
In that same year.
March was terrible.
Wow, really short then. So
Really terrible.
Are you saying to me that you had not thought about this or done a whole lot of planning prior to Q1 of 2023 around selling the company?
I met with my first company on July 13th. And I didn't tell my two top guys that I met with them. And at 4 o'clock, I walked in to tell one of the top guys, because he'd been with me 25 years. I asked him two questions. What have I done that I shouldn't do? And what haven't I done that I should do? And he said, you haven't done anything wrong. But what thing you should do is you should consider selling.
Yeah.
I said, okay. Well, I met with somebody today. He came up behind the veil.
Yeah.
I felt guilty about not telling you that. But now he goes, well, let's go. I got some ideas.
Okay.
But we got to tell the other guy. And the other guy's not going to like this.
Yeah.
So I went for a walk. It was 91 degrees, went for a walk, and at 6:13, I was attacked by a pit bull that nearly killed me.
Oh, my goodness.
And got on me 3 times. He was off his leash. Finally got him off me the 3rd time, and the owner leashed him and then left me to bleed out. But fortunately, I had my cell phone with me, and I don't live far, and my wife got me there, and I survived. And that was the demarcation moment that, I was in the hospital for a few days, and I talked to God at length about this, and he said, I didn't do that to you, but you were out of the kingdom. You were not peaceful. When you're not peaceful, the enemy can get you, and the enemy got you. Now, I pulled the enemy off you. You didn't, at 63 years old, you didn't put an 80-pound pit bull off you 3 times. And so I came back in, after a few days out, and told the other gentleman that it's game on. And he said, well, hey, at my other company, this is what I did. Let me help.
Awesome.
And so off we went.
And so ultimately you went with CMG. Really common misconception that happens in folks that we're in conversations with is they think, hey, I'm going to get all my money up front, right? Walk us through at a high level. How was your deal structured? Did you have performance-based earnouts? What percentage did you get up front in cash, if any? Was there a rollover?
Not a stock sale, so we agreed on a price of the assets.
Okay.
And they gave me a fair price of what the assets were. And me as a sole owner of an S corporation, that is what I would take out on day one. Cool. There are also other complications. What happens to loans that are in the pipeline that now have to sell when I have given up my license? And CMG was very cooperative with that. So was a couple of other potential bidders that said, look, we'll buy your loans off you when they're on your line for somebody else.
Yeah.
And then I got a 3-year earnout.
Okay.
Descending based on
100% of the enterprise value or on a percentage?
No, on production of loan officers that stayed.
Got it.
And we then we had the worst 3 months we've ever had in the industry. And then we had that, a normal bad 3 months and a normal bad 3 months. So it was important to me that they stayed for my earnout. So it was important that culture was maintained to keep them there. About 80% of them have stayed. So that's good. And I'm halfway through.
So you're halfway through on an earnout. Obviously, a really interesting deal structure based upon your industry that
Yep.
may be similar,
Unique to the industry, definitely.
But here's my question to you: earnouts very commonly misunderstood. What do you believe about earnouts now, 18 months later? Now that you're halfway through that process, that maybe you would say, "Hey, I didn't really get this, or I didn't see this coming." Back before the deal was inked. Anything like that?
Yeah, only one thing. What happens if somebody leaves and comes back? Because they had contracts that would keep them there for a year, but two of them wanted to break them and left.
Got
So
it.
obviously I wouldn't be paid on them. But then one came back, like real quickly, and there was some hesitancy that I wouldn't be compensated. But to CMG's credit,
Yeah.
they said, you get paid for anybody that produces any business that they produced on the day you left, whether they left for a while or came back. You'll get paid. You don't get paid when they're not producing it for us.
Cool.
But that name is your name.
Talk to us about who, in these last couple of minutes here, and then we'll wrap. Talk to us about who you used to guide you in this process, right? Clearly, you had one of your two lieutenants internally that apparently had done some acquisitions or sales.
Yep.
Law firm, M&A advisor, tax planning, estate planning. Who all did you involve in the loop, and what did you learn?
Used all of them. They all did a fine job, but I didn't. I got my information from C12 guys that I abided with and prayed on, and I got four promises from God
Okay.
in that June before the attack and the people in July. I said, "What are your promises for me in this season?" And he gave me four. And the first thing we do as believers is we believe the first lie of the devil. The devil's first lie, this applies to people that don't even know the Bible, is, did God really say that? Hey, you shouldn't eat from that tree. Did God really say that?
Yeah.
So the first lie we always fight is, God really say that? So God gave me four verses, and then I fought for promises. So then I fought for a month. Did God really say that? Oh, those mind. And it was a couple of really good brothers in Christ who said, are you going to stop that? Because you keep doing that. And then there's a great Bible verse that hands on the plow, don't look back. I kept looking back and saying, I made mistakes here. I didn't build a servicing portfolio.
Yeah.
I paid my loan officers too much, so my cost structure was out of line.
Yes.
So I just kept praying and asking and confirming. Now, the guys I was confirming with are CEOs and former CEOs.
Okay.
Not in my industry. Guys, you know, that one's the CEO of C12 right now, or the head of the board of directors. So I had brilliant insights. And then my two top guys, I would run them by, and they would disagree often with me. But I would say, well, God's going to make this decision, so not us. That's exactly how it happened. Came down to the last days. There were two companies in front of us. One of my guys wanted one of the guys wanted the other. One of them controlled half the yellows, the other half controlled the other half of yellows, roughly. And I said, you guys have taken a decision out of my hands after 35 years. This is gross.
Yeah.
And I said, this was a Monday, I said, when I come back on Wednesday, we're going to make a decision. They said, back on Wednesday? We're up against the gun here. you got to be here tomorrow. I said, no, tomorrow's my C12 day. I'll be with them. And when I came back, we had a 9 o'clock meeting, and at 9:15 it was over. One of the guys said, it is the right thing. And God, one of the promises God had said to me was, when those two guys are united, that's where you're going. Not you. And by 9:15, they were united.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Man, what an awesome conversation. I mean, I think you've had an amazing journey in life and in building a company and in walking by faith and seeing amazing things in the lives of your employees as a result of that. Hey, as we wrap, just tell everybody who's listening what you're up to now, how they could connect with you, and the sort of work that you're doing today.
Yeah, I got to throw in a little update there, I guess. So you can find me at, my website is not live, and I'll tell you why it's not live in a minute. It'll be deanharrington.live when it is. Okay. I'm working with companies on alignment, core values, hiring, retaining talent, Core purpose is big with me, vision, annual planning. I'm in a minor pause with that. I did a company yesterday because right when I came out of my company, I got prostate cancer, which was not, if there's a cancer you should get, that's the one.
Yeah.
And so I had a surgery and took some time off, but then came out and started working with companies in January, really heavy, like every day, working with companies, and was getting on a plane to head to work in Florida with a couple of my favorite companies. And I got a stomach ache and ended up at my doctor's office, and then ended up finding out I had pancreatic cancer. So I'm right now, 8 weeks in chemo with 12 weeks total.
Yeah.
I believe I'll be healed. I feel good on most days, which I can't believe. I've lost a lot of weight, which bugs me, but I'm basically over that. So the easiest way to get in touch with me is just to send me just send me an email at dean.harrington@shamrockhomeloans.com. That is still alive until I switch over to the active Dean Harrington Live. So Dean, I know I threw a lot out there, and that's the best way not to get people to get in touch with you.
We'll put you in the show notes. So.
You can find me on LinkedIn too. I'm pretty active. I still post a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. I still want to help companies get better. I can do that. I did a full day yesterday when I had a terrible night sleeping because of some incidents with chemo a couple of days before. So I'm still got my energy. I'm still ready to roll.
Awesome. Dean, thanks so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk, to share your wisdom with us. You know, one of the things I'm a huge fan of is Stephen Covey's, one of his statements in 7 Habits, which is begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
And I think what you've walked us through today is just some amazing things to think about living now and leading now with that end in mind. And so it's been an honor to be with you.
Thank you for that. And I have great affection for you, and I missed being with you last week in Dallas, and we'll make that up sometime. And it's an honor to be here with you, with your audience. It really is. And I'm open to any questions. I mean, I'm not doing a lot. I'm down here in Florida, and I'm not doing a lot in between treatments. So keep me busy.
Thanks for joining us on Legendary Exits. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you did, give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform, and be sure to subscribe to the show to stay connected with more stories of purpose-driven exits. You can find more information at legendaryexits.com. Until next time.